I would like to welcome you to this closing session. After 2 days of discussion, we are about to close this session. But as you have seen that during these 2 days, we had discussed on a number of issues. As I had mentioned earlier, and you have observed that there were 9 parallel sessions, 3 plenary sessions, and the issues ranged from macroeconomics to health, to women's empowerment, to labor market issues, to role of knowledge actors, and many more. So, in fact, we have a lot on our plate now going forward. So in this closing session, we plan to present a very brief summary of what has been discussed during these 2 days. Of course, it's not inclusive and not in no way it is exhaustive, but just to give you the flavor of the important issues which we have covered. So that is on the agenda. Apart from that, we have a few distinguished speakers and also some of our co-organizers. So we have in this session Professor Rehman Sobhan as the chair, who is the founding chairman of Center for Policy Dialogue. We have guests of honor, Ms. Irosha Courier, you know her by now. And we have Mr. Florian Hellen, who is the head of Cooperation Embassy of the Federal Republic of Germany, Mr. Stefan Liller, resident representative UNDP in Dhaka. And apart from that, we have 2 of our co-organizers, Dr. Sachin Chaturvedi, who is about to come. He's on his way because he has to leave in a while. So I think he's getting ready. So he'll come anytime. And apart from that, we have Dr. Paras Karel, who is the Executive Director of South Asia Watch on Trade, Economics and Environment, South Nepal. Indeed, the next SAES would be in Nepal and will be organized by Southie. So we'll have to pass on the baton to him. So he's here. So to start with, I would request our Research Director, Dr. Khundokar Ghulam Moazem, to present the conference summary. I don't know how long, but I would like you to finish it within 10 minutes. So 12 sessions, 10 minutes, so 12 minutes then, 1 minute for each session.
Honorable Chair of the session, Professor Rehman Sobhan, Chairman, Center for Policy Dialogue Board of Trustees, guest of honor, distinguished speakers, session moderator, visiting fellow travelers of South Asia, guests from Bangladesh, journalists, and media representatives. We are at the end of the 2-day-long 14th South Asia Economic Summit. This 2-day event gave us the opportunity to discuss various issues related to South Asia under the overall theme of the event, reframing South Asian regional cooperation in the new context, national and global dimensions. As you have already heard, a total of 3 plenaries, 9 parallel sessions, and 1 inaugural session has been organized during the 2-day event, where as many as 70 panelists and 90 interventions have taken place. And all the sessions were filled with esteemed participants. We would like to extend our heartfelt thanks to all the session chairs, panelists of different sessions, and participants of these sessions. A team of rapporteurs led by Mr. Tawfiqul Islam Khan, Senior Research Fellow, CPD, has done a great job in preparing the session notes within a short period of time. I think the conference's overall focus is how to move forward South Asian regional partnership and cooperation, despite having changes and challenges in national and international arena. And Professor Rehman Sobhan, in his inaugural session's remark, set the milestone of this journey. That is, he urged for working towards building a South Asian community, where civil society organizations, along with the state machineries, should take collective actions towards that direction. In the inaugural session of the event, The speakers appreciated the economic development that has taken place in South Asian countries over the last decades, which is in terms of persistence, high growth, smaller gaps in investments, enhancement of cross-border energy trade. However, it is also admissible that those growth in the region is diverse in nature. Beside the state actors, CSOs also played a major role in terms of poverty alleviation, reducing gender disparity and women empowerment, human rights, education, and agricultural development. And some of these developments happened through bilateral partnership, and also in this context, road and rail connectivity made a good example here. The question is that to what extent this growth narrative be labeled as strong regional cooperation in South Asia? Definitely not. In case of the challenges, the speakers discussed about bilateral tensions between countries within South Asia, shifting geopolitics, Middle East and Eurasian conflicts, concerns regarding food security, climate change, challenges of graduating LDCs, then persistent high income inequality, gender disparities, unplanned urbanization, trade restrictions, most importantly in case of trade in food and other trade barriers. While the multilateral development agencies have been working at single country level, but particularly in the connectivity projects, but there are lack of projects where these kinds of cooperation or multilateral development finance is lack in terms of cross-border regional connectivity. But there is South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, SAARC, but despite having its role to play, it has yet to made a major role in this context. Several SAARC-based institutions like SAARC Development Finance, SAARC Food Bank, SAARC Seed Bank, despite having their institutional setup, are not yet in operation. The cross-border road connectivity like SAARC road connectivity or the BBIN road initiatives are yet to get final nod because of political differences between the countries. So the speakers of this session has recommended that promotion of regional cooperation and partnership, despite having the changing national regional context, then further assistance for graduating LDCs of South Asia, which include Bangladesh, Bhutan, and Nepal. Then collectively working on climate change issues, including information sharing, cross-border disaster management, ensuring operationalization of SAARC institutions, particularly SAARC Development Finance, SAARC Seed Bank, and SAARC Food Bank. Avoid restrictive practices, trade practices, in case of particularly food and essential drugs, taking the advantage of the global and regional value chains, public and private sector investments in green and sustainable finance, and integrated basin management for South Asian river systems, and easing visa restrictions and reducing trade barriers to enhance regional trade. In case of the first plenary, which focused on the state of regional cooperation in South Asia, revisiting Group of Eminent Persons report, new context, challenges, and opportunities, the speakers have discussed the aspirations made in the GEP report and discussed the issues that have emerged over the last 15 years. Since the global financial crisis in 2008, world trade has failed to regain momentum, and international investments have plateaued. Currently, a phenomenon often referred to as, instead of globalization, it is globalization that has been referred to in the session. So a shift of the focus from financial economy and hyper-globalization to real economy has been mentioned in this session. The SAARC should not, it is also mentioned by the panelists that SAARC should not hold hostage to intergovernmental differences, and SAARC can benefit from learning from ASEAN. And despite bilateral tensions among ASEAN member states, they continue to collaborate and move forward with their activities towards that goal. The sub-regional cooperation can also focus on areas like trade facilitation, connectivity, and disaster management. And it is also said that under the current context, creation of a new GEP has become the need of the time. This new GEP should take into account the lessons of the past and what has worked and what hasn't, and for which an evidence-based assessment is required. In the parallel session, the first parallel session on the multimodal transport, The speakers highlighted the challenges of the multimodal connectivity with regard to the geopolitical issues, where they have also mentioned good governance, challenges of the good governance, poor existing infrastructure, bureaucratic bottlenecks. And they also mentioned about lack of alignment between national and regional planning. And customs as logistic facilities on the borders are not consistent on both sides. And the harmonization among the states and regions in terms of the customs procedure is widely missing. So trust deficit is also a major factor prohibiting the multimodal connectivity. There are some progress in terms of the bilateral and the sub-regional integration initiatives, and these kinds of initiatives should be expedited further towards more of a regional kinds of initiatives in the future. And private sector role should have to be much more broadened, and it is suggested that private sector airlines can facilitate port sharing with other airlines to improve multimodal connectivity. Then it is also mentioned that there is an agreement to be reached on structure, framework, and modality of finance for the multimodal connectivity within the region. In case of the parallel session on macroeconomic cooperation and possibility of common currency, the speakers discussed about dominance of single currency, US dollar, and the possibility of a de-dollarization, and what prospect of single currency outside dollar, or a digital currency, or a pool of currencies to take the position of US dollar. And it is mentioned that over the years, the share of USD in global transaction has decreased from 72% in 2000 to 59% in 2023. Despite that, none of the currency is yet to fully ready to take that position. So it is mentioned that the fostering cooperation in South Asia requires going beyond physical connectivity, and it necessitates integration of digital connectivity, particularly in banking and finance. Clarity regarding the mechanics of cross-border transactions and permissible types of current account and capital account transactions are essential. Harmonizing tax policies, such as customs duty rationalization, congruent income tax policies is essential to combat profit shifting and ensure collective efforts for fairness. South Asian countries, including India, as part of the G77 plus China, may consider setting up a virtual currency akin to special drawing rights. Establishing institutional learning sharing mechanisms where institutions like central bank convene regularly is critical. This ensures continuous discussion on inflation differentials, then currency system adjustments, and interest rate fixations in different countries. In case of the parallel session towards an integrated energy grid, the panelists and the discussions that has taken place there have mentioned about that there is a sheer potential for cross-border trade of energy because of seasonal variation of energy demand and supply, particularly in Nepal and Bhutan, who have surplus hydropower during the monsoon seasons. And Bangladesh also has an electricity demand, low demand during winter. So these kinds of electricity could be traded, and where I think not only the energy trade, but also it will be a clean energy trade that could be facilitated through this cross-border energy grid. And there are several bilateral energy trade models currently ongoing, but there is lack of regional institutional framework. So we should work for that. And in this case, collaboration with BBIN could be the starter, and after that, SAARC can step into in case of the regional cooperation. So we must kickstart the regional cooperation for grid integration, but that depends on two factors. One is geopolitical, and another one is technological transformation. I think India has a major role to play in terms of the regional grid integration or the regional energy cooperation. And in this sense, I think a meaningful cooperation in South Asian region must include all the South Asian countries. And government must design business-friendly policies and structure to incentivize the private sector to participate in establishing regional grid transmission system. While we all understand that economic cost of climate change is much higher than it was anticipated, as part of mitigating measures, necessary investment is required for energy transition, and each country should first identify on their infrastructure and technology, but later on skilled workforce, knowledge, soft skills, where necessary investments are also be required for ensuring smooth transition. In the plenary session 2, that is identifying the new opportunities, new modalities for fostering regional cooperation in South Asia, it is discussed that there was a potential agreement between India and Pakistan to convert the most favored nations to each other, which came to halt in 2014 because of the political differences. But this was a missed opportunity because this agreement needs to be revived, as it would have been linked to SAFTA, which would have decreased the negative risk associated with exports from Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Nepal. Traditional approach of cooperation are too much top-down, government-led, and too much focused on economic growth and development. A more people-centric approach involving non-state actors, such as civil society and private sector, is needed in developing and implementing regional cooperation initiatives. In this case, the issue is whether the regional cooperation in South has been evolved from an aspirational and ambitious approach to a more realpolitik model. A suggestion came is that there is a potential proposal to establish a South Asian 8 as like G7 or the G8 countries with rotational leadership and joint commitment not to break apart. And this South Asia 8 would demand differentiation from SARC-like process, and which would allow more flexibility and create political momentum for heads of states meeting. Regional cooperation already focuses on infrastructure and connectivity, and it should also focus on education and public health, because these are more linked with, and for this, I think it is necessary to ensure certification, standardized certification, accreditation, and to handle excess demand for higher education. And institutionalizing the learnings from COVID-19 is also an important public health issue. In case of the plenary session 3, geostrategic factors underpinning contemporary trends in South Asian cooperation, it is mentioned that regionalism is a process that takes part in people's mind. Unfortunately, the deficit in South Asia is that it has not yet taken a deep root. And the weaponization of the economies, culture, business, and politics surpasses this cooperation. And unless this is overcome, it will be difficult to survive and play a major role in this region. It is also suggested that multipolarity must be considered side by side with multilateralism. The prosperity of people should come before the prospect of becoming a superpower, so countries should consider need to cooperate, coexist, and live together. The politics behind sub-regional groups need to be taken into cognizance. And within South Asia, there is another South Asia where states are raising respective voices and seeking multiple alliances. And for SAARC to survive, a reframing of the organization is essential. It needs to have a conflict resolution mechanism. In case of the parallel session on climate change and resilience, it is mentioned that cost of climate finance should be lowered within the region. And the government should ensure effective implementation of the policies, simultaneous implementation of adaptation and mitigation strategies. And partnership between different vulnerable cities in South Asia is also necessary. And cities that are situated in inappropriate locations or lack of proper planning are also disproportionately affected in South Asia, and they should also be duly taken into cognizance in government support. Impact of climate change in the coastal areas are quite vital and quite aggressive, and actual cost of damage in those areas are quite high, and we should take those into account. And countries of South Asia need to transfer the technology, green tech solutions, sustainable agricultural technology. I think COP28 should be taken as a major means of raising South Asian demand in case of the water and coastal security, and it may also take into cognizance there on climate finance, like loss and damage related, finance related issues there. I think the promotion of the green energy is vital, and implementation of an enhanced early warning system is quite important there. In case of sharing resources across nations, has a good potential to address challenges associated with climate change, where South Asian countries may cooperate with each other. With regard to the parallel session cross-border labor market management, It is said that poverty is a primary cause for this unsafe migration within the region, and human trafficking is also a major concern, and that needs to be addressed. And it is also said that undocumented regional migration is widely happening, and it is not reflected in official documents and official statistics. And because of it, I think migration to the informal sector with low wages puts them at higher risk of discrimination. The national security concerns and conflicts between natives and non-natives pose challenges to cross-border labor migration issue. There should be a study which focuses on skill demand analysis, where which country has which sorts of skills are available and what sorts of skills are there that could be identified through that study. And in this case, I think ASEAN experience and ASEAN models can be taken into cognizance for a regional labor migration. I think due to gender norms in South Asia, women face constraints when entering the job market and reaching the upper segment of the employment sector. Therefore, uplifting skills for women is highly essential. So a harmonized accreditation of skills of workers in the region could allow them to find job opportunities through cross-border labor markets. In the parallel session, Value Chains and FDI, it is said that the advantage of South Asia had been providing affordable labor and resources is slowly fading away, as both the labor and the resources are getting expensive within the region. So there is a need for more FDI. And that idea is that FDI and global value chains can reinforce each other. But at the same time, it is also true that we need to promote the local SMEs and the CSMEs. And for that, I think we should not actually wait for foreign direct investments only. And the SAARC Chamber of Commerce should be a mediator between private sector, but that private sector should not only focusing on the large industries, but also should promote SMEs, and also the government should enhance the value chain where participation of the SMEs could be enhanced. The possibility of reviving food corridors need to be explored. It has been said in a session. And also, SAARC countries should work, South Asian countries should work together in green initiatives. Harmonized environmental standards of traded products could be a possible avenue of cooperation. In parallel session on role of knowledge actors in advancing a new political settlement in South Asia, it is said that there has been a long-standing tradition of collaboration among think tanks in South Asia, and various coalitions of think tanks have joined forces to work collectively since 1980s. And the role of think tanks include promoting evidence-based policy, providing forums for open dialogues, and complementing official processes to track progresses. I think nowadays think tanks face several challenges, such as sustainability, funding shortages, and reduced civic spaces. To maintain their independence, it is critical for think tanks to remain objective and neutral. It is also essential for all think tanks to connect and ensure knowledge transfer in all directions. Advancing political settlement requires various knowledge actors, such as think tanks, researchers, and they need to visit their countries to establish networks and friendships, which can build a strong foundation and cooperation. Knowledge actors, universities, think tanks should come up with new ideas, fellowships, or transfer knowledge by transferring students among the countries of this region, which is already there, but that need to be further extended. Cooperation in public health, it is mentioned that 3 major collaboration scope in South Asia are there. Telemedicine could be one important area where South Asian country could develop an inclusive healthcare system. Collaboration in fighting diseases like TB, COVID, and other emerging infections need support of skills and medical facilities. And pharmaceutical production and investments within an integrated manner could take place here. Universal public health care is challenging due to financing issues, and such an inadequate infrastructure mechanism and support is suffering most of the South Asian countries, where I think we need to find out a model of a universal health cover system to cover most of the citizens of these regions. I think we don't employ the SAES system in the healthcare regional integration, but we should take that into account. The COVID-19 was the first incident where South Asian leaders met for the first time for an effective solution. But they didn't follow up after some time. So a nice example could be ASEAN, where the healthcare regional integration is currently ongoing, and a one-yearly meeting is taking place among the health professional and on healthcare regional integration. SAARC and other regional organizations need to take initiative for regional integration of public health, and not all SAARC summits incorporated the discussion of the public health issues into their summits, but given the growing health-related hazards and concerns, more and more health-related partnership and cooperation between the countries is quite essential. Finally, the gender equality and the women empowerment session, it is mentioned that the access to information and access to finance are the major challenges for women entrepreneurs. And they need a lot of support in terms of training, financing, where the private sector can play a big role. Here is a high incidence of dropouts of female students in tertiary education across South Asia due to lack of safe environment. So it is essential to ensure safety for women in public place. Without this, we will fall to ensure a higher female participation in education and workplace. And there is a balancing need for workplace and the personal life, and which is a major challenge for women for participation in the labor market. As they are the sole caregivers, they have an unfair share of family responsibilities. So it is high time to address the discriminatory laws of South Asian countries and to revise those in order to ensure gender parity. So these are all the major the key highlights. Maybe there are some important points maybe missing, but we will definitely take those into account if you just raise those issues afterwards. But thank you for your patient hearing.
Thank you, Muazzem. As you have heard, that these are just a summary of the panelists and discussants' observations, which you have discussed during the last 2 days. So whatever is missing, we will take note of that because we have all the recordings, and we will also come back to you afterwards if we need more support in terms of reviewing this document. And I must also say that the discussions which have taken place, we are going to bring out proceedings at least, if not a volume. In the last 2 SAES, which CPD had organized, we brought out volumes, so we are hoping that we will be able to also bring out another volume, but for that, we will come back to you because we need your write-ups. Whatever you have said, now you have to put into that in black and white. So thank you once again. So I would now call upon to Dr. Sachin Chaturvedi, who is the Director General of Research and Information System in New Delhi. So Sachin, if you can come here and make a short remark. Wherever is comfortable.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. No. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Fahmida. Thanks, Muazzem, for presenting a very substantive summary, and the passion with which you presented showed your involvement and engagement. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to closing of this great beginning that we made 2 days ago. And I think as the summary showed, all the sessions, all the plenaries covered substantive issues which are there. I would very much like to pick up where I left in the inaugural session and got enriched in last 2 days. Yesterday was quite enriching. But I think the point that Professor Rehman Subhan made in the beginning in terms of how do we collectively contribute towards South Asia identity is something that is a central question to us and should remain with the South Asia Economic Summit process and the institutions which are involved. He alluded to SAES, and I think it is important for us to see what new additions we can make to our work program, our respective work programs. As all of you might have already gathered, SAES is a process which is led in a particular year by one institution, but it is a process which goes to each partner institution. And I think it's a great occasion for us to be in Dhaka when CPD is celebrating 30 years. So once again, Dr. Famida, congratulations to you and to your team. And my greetings for Professor Rahman Subhan Debuda and Professor Mustafizur for shaping this over these years that we have. I have just a couple of points to make, and I think it is important for us as I realize I'm sitting next to Erosha Kurev, the director from SAC Secretariat. I think all of us in our research community have felt the need to revive SAC and build on further in terms of the institutions that were created as part of it. But I think the suggestion that has come in terms of the new dynamics and Dr. Mozem alluded to that in terms of South Asia 8 or whatever we call it, to begin the process. There was adequate recognition of sub-regional, micro-regional, bilateral, all. But I think it's important that the region should move on and we create bringing in dimensions of engagement, partnerships as per the new priority areas that are there. Some of that can be prioritized in the fields where SAARC never attempted or the functioning period of SAARC never imagined in terms of banking and finance, though the SAARC thing is there, which Reserve Bank of India and all the central banks are connected with. But as we discussed, more energy is needed in terms of how banking and financial architecture can be strengthened. There are certain qualifications that are needed in terms of how our banking architecture is to be strengthened. With my visits to Bhutan and then some interactions with Sonar Bank here in Bangladesh, we are trying to strengthen as to how the business community can be benefited from the banking restrictions that are there. So far, we never imagined that our banks would operate in each other's country. But that is now an opportunity. With Sonar Bank's success in India, we are seeing major opportunities coming in. Similarly, Bank of Bhutan would be another opportunity. So there is an effort to go in that direction where it never happened. Some of that demand can come on from SAES, and I think it's very important, Dr. Mozem, for us to also have collective demand from the UN when we are there. It was with great effort. Dr. Nagesh was there at UNSCAP, and all of us demanded, and we got SANS created, the South Asia Network for Sustainable Development Goals. After change of guard, UNSCAP is now going slow on promoting and integrating SANS within the framework of the UNSCAP. So the South Asia Economic Summit should go beyond the summit process itself. And this, Dr. Mozem, I think is an important dimension which I think we can do in the days to come with our next presidency going to Nepal. I would very much like to urge three things with our colleagues from Nepal, and I do not know which table they are on, but I don't see them here. Of course, Paras is here. I was looking for Posh. But I think Paras certainly, if the dates are announced well in advance, that would help everyone. The second point is to start a process of joint studies to be presented at least in some session. And that, I think, would be important for us to see how the South Asia Economic Summit encourages only, as Mozem very rightly said, evidence-based studies. We should just encourage papers which are written on facts, on data, and not on general perceptions. Let journalists do whatever they are doing. but we should promote only hardcore economics or any other social science. I'm not so much in favor of economics alone. Let other streams also come in, but we should do that. And I think it would encourage much more meaningful a conversation in our region, and for that, joint studies should be conducted. Like, for instance, in one of the sessions where I was, issue related to migration came in, and Posh, I was discussing with you. I think more substantive study by our joint research initiative with the 2 or 3 institutions coming together supporting those studies. Similarly, on duty-free, quota-free access, the perception came up that India extended to Bangladesh only under duty-free, quota-free access. And I then checked today morning, and I found that it was during Pranab Mukherjee's visit in 2011, India went above duty-free, quota-free for Bangladesh in 2011. Whether that happened, it did not happen, is it a perception, or is it a reality? To what extent Bangladesh could take advantage? In fact, my colleagues at RIS have calculated duty foregone by India from 2011 till now for all the LDCs, and this comes to $7.5 billion for India. So such factual studies are extremely important, where we do not lose our memory and become vulnerable again. I think being in academics, we should provide leadership rather than being led by politics of the region. So we should not allow ourselves to go to that extent and focus on this. Similarly, in last South Asia Economic Summit, we had discussed that there should be a session to focus on voluntary national reports, VNRs, on SDG movement. So OECD came up with this methodology of gap analysis, which ASEAN has done. I think it would be good if our community can produce gap analysis for SDGs, and in the next summit, all of us get opportunity to present that. I would also make one suggestion, again, I think it would be applicable for Nepal, is based on our own experience with G20 in India, where my institution was asked by the Prime Minister to reach out to 75 universities. And fortunately, we could reach out to 101 universities in the country, and we could bring in students. I think it would be important for young generation to make presentations at this, where we have stalwarts from the region like Professor Rehman Sobhan and Professor Ronak Jahan from Bangladesh, but from other countries. And we get an opportunity for youngsters, for the PhD scholars to make presentations in some parallel sessions, so that we have contributions, research community contributing to our joint efforts that are there. 2 more points and then I quickly close. One is in terms of trade, investment, finance, technology. The various sessions which were planned were excellent, and Dr. Fahmida, congratulations to you for bringing forward the idea of reframing from different perspectives. The suggestion that I want to make, as we discussed in the value chain session, the need is to have, and Bhanu very rightly summarized it, saying that DPI and DPG, the digital public infrastructure and digital public goods in the region, are extremely important for us to go forward. Just before coming here, I had an opportunity of working with BMZ and GIZ in India to explore triangular cooperation and the focus in terms of how India, Germany, and in Bangladesh we have India, Japan working together. So these opportunities that are there with triangular cooperation, we can take that forward in terms of how cooperation can go forward. Some emphasis, and that's my last point, some emphasis on good governance is, I think, equally important. And in some session, we should focus on how good governance and democracy can still deliver economic results that are desired by our people, that matches the aspirations in the region. But I think this agenda would keep on going as we organize several meetings in the course of the year. more opportunity of we coming together more often in the year than only at the summit, I think is important. Just to mention to you, end of this month, 26th to 28th of November, RIS is organizing a conference on lifestyle for sustainable development. And on 9th and 10th December, we are organizing 40th anniversary conference for RIS. So as CPD celebrates 30 years, we are celebrating 40 years. 9th and 10th of December, we do this conference on regional cooperation in Delhi. And I think only Dr. Fahmida that we can consider is to bring in Bhutan among us here in this group. As of now, only 4 institutions are there. If we bring in Bhutan, that would also bring in a huge heft on the table. I stop here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Sachin, for those very concrete recommendations. Now, as I have mentioned that as we draw the curtain of 14th South Asian Economic Summit, I'm happy to announce that the next, that is 15th SAES would be held in Kathmandu, Nepal. And I'm happy to pass the baton to Sauti. Dr. Paras Kharel, who is the Executive Director of Sauti, is here. So, congratulations, and you have a responsibility now to take it forward. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Fahmida. To me, this is 30 years of experience shining out, 30 years of experience in research, analysis, advocacy, dialogue. They show up clearly in the organization of the 14th South Asia Economic Summit, led by the CPD, which is also commemorating its 30th birthday. I think this has been a success on all counts, in terms of substance as well as form, in terms of content as well as the way it has been executed over the last 2 days. So congratulations to Dr. Fahmida, Dr. Moazem, and the entire CPD team. And the summary just meticulously read out by Dr. Moazem shows the diversity of topics covered and the richness of discussions. And this summary, plus the proceedings report we all look forward to, will definitely inform the next South Asia Economic Summit and beyond. And each individual is entitled to his or her, takeaways from any summit. So for me, there are a number of takeaways that reflect the unique features of this summit to some extent. One, SAARC is languishing, but it will be premature to talk about its burial. There are opportunities in terms of utilizing the existing mechanism and institutions within SAARC, and some creative suggestions also came up during the discussions as to how to revitalize SAARC within its constraints, of course. And it has left considerable food for thought for South Asian thinkers and South Asia Economic Summit going forward in terms of SAARC, instead of easily succumbing to the temptation of writing SAARC off. Second, sharpening geopolitical rivalries are one facet of the changed context which has, in my view, motivated this summit led by CPD to essentially seek suggestions for reframing South Asian regional cooperation. And let me recall that at the 10th South Asia Economic Summit, which we had held at Kathmandu in 2017, the rise of China and the deep economic ties the South Asian nations have with China had come up in several sessions, although that was not the specific topic. And this is the first time in an economic summit that geopolitics or geostrategic factors has featured consciously as an identified theme, and that too with a session dedicated to it. And given the complexity involved, of course, this is a first stab at the topic, and no concrete answers as such, did emerge to the precise questions posed. But I think this will be an unfinished agenda for discussion in the future summits. How to navigate these geopolitically charged times and also preserve regional cooperation. And finally, there were suggestions that it might be good to revisit the Eminent Persons Group's report in light of the changed context, and also consolidate the messages that have emerged from past South Asia Economic Summits, including this one, and assess progress or lack of progress towards the various issues and recommendations made to date. And with all these in mind, we'll be going forward. And I'm happy to again note that SAUTI will be hosting the next South Asia Economic Summit, the 15th summit, in Nepal, in collaboration with its other 4 partners. And I and SAUTI will look forward to meeting as many of you as possible, in the next summit. Thank you, CPD.
Thank you, Dr. Paras Kharel. Now I would like to request our guests of honor. I would first call upon Ms. Irosha Kure, who is the Director, Education, Security and Culture, South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, SAARC. So if you can make a short remark.
Honorable Chair, Dr. Famida Khatun, Executive Director, Center for Policy Dialogue, Dhaka, Bangladesh, representative of the co-organizers and partners, distinguished participants. Namaste, Ayubowan, Assalamu alaikum, and good afternoon. I'm very pleased that on behalf of His Excellency Ambassador Gholam Sarwar, I had the honor to represent the SAARC Secretariat to attend the 14th Economic Summit under the theme of reframing South Asian regional cooperation in the new context, national and global dimension. I'm equally honored now to have this opportunity to address the closing ceremony of this important event. Distinguished participants, I had the pleasure and privilege of attending plenary session on 4th November and benefited a lot from the discussion on the theme. I am also learning that deliberation over the last 2 days have been extremely productive, providing distinguished delegates an opportunity to understand where the region stands in the terms of regional cooperation. It was an opportune occasion for the think tanks, research bodies, academia, circle, and other intellectuals of the region to come together for exchanging ideas and knowledge sharing. I'm glad to note that today, South Asian Economic Summit produced fruitful outcomes as envisioned by the organizers and partners, which I am sure would contribute more focused effort and practices for enriching the understanding of reframing and reshaping the regional cooperation in the region. Distinguished participants, without shadow of doubt, the new development at the global pose new challenges. The challenges and their complexities are more felt and seen now than ever, with the world becoming more and more interconnected and interdependent. Establishment of SAARC signifies the clear vision and wisdom of our leaders, even decades back. SAARC is firmly committed more than ever for pursuing regional cooperation and steadfastly continuing its efforts to contribute to fulfillment of the collective aspiration of the peoples of its member states. In conclusion, I would like to state that I'm sure that organizing such event would surely provide great opportunity for stakeholders of the region in different sections and fields to pool their knowledge and resources together and assist the policymakers of our region to successfully address our challenges. I would like to thank once again the Center for Policy Dialogue and its co-organizer partners for their commendable job of organizing this important event and for their invitation to the SAARC Secretariat. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kure. I'd like to now request Mr. Florian Helen, who is the Head of Cooperation, Embassy of the Federal Republic of Germany in Bangladesh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, dear colleagues of the Center for Policy Dialogue, all participants who have organized this conference and made this conference a success. I would like to tackle a bit some general questions of cooperation and try to bring together the experiences of the South Asian region with the experiences also of Europe, as well as the role of our development cooperation in this regard. I think it's quite remarkable that often there are different kind of regional entities which are exist, which have competing mandates, or where some unclarity who is doing what. We have the SARC, we have BIMSTEC, we even have like very small institutions which also have a role in their respective area, like for example the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development. And I think like one role or one step ahead for making these different institutions more functional would be a joint understanding on who is doing what. Not everyone needs to do everything, because in the end then nothing is done, but rather a kind of division of labor, which topics we want to treat in which forum, and then also focus all these political efforts from the leaderships of the countries there. I think we also see that in some cases the ambitions for the cooperation are much higher, and also the potentials than the actual implementation of these efforts. And so the question needs to be addressed, like how to overcome and how to proceed, even if particular processes are stuck or are stuck on one level. And one approach is the approach of a multi-stakeholder approach, an approach we are also following our climate and development partnerships with different countries of the region, which simply means that you try to proceed with those who are willing, who have an interest to cooperate, irrespective of if on some other level it's not yet moving. But you start also from below and bring different stakeholders together, so also the private sector, academia, civil society, and to grow not only from above and expect that the leadership will give you a directive, but rather to start from below and thus show the political leaders that there is an interest and a commitment of the relevant institutions of a country for this cooperation. And it's not seen as a danger to the national interests, but rather to a means to achieve the national interests by cooperation. So I think that's a different change of a mindset. And it also means to incorporate the idea that you have to give something in order to learn more, or I would say to invest something in order to gain more together. And this challenge is a different challenge for the different countries in the South Asian region, because they are of different size. And in Europe we also had such a kind of process. And here we also see, I think, that sometimes the biggest country in the region has a bit of hesitancy of giving away its role. But if we see the example of Germany in Europe, or say West and Middle Europe, it is the main profiteer somehow of the European integration. It did give up in the beginning somehow in terms also of who is deciding what, but economically it is the main winner of this process. And I think this example could also be encouraging for the South Asian region. It will also mean to see how we as development partners can cooperate and can contribute to these efforts. We do this, for example, to regional projects. We have one kind of regional project currently in the making on the Sundarbans, for example, but we also have the large projects and programs as part of the European Union, where we are the major contributor, like the Global Gateway Initiative, and we had last weekend about 400 million commitment at the Global Gateway Summit in Brussels, which was for Bangladesh. But similar commitments are, of course, like possible for the other countries in the region in general, if there's a joint understanding. And this is also something we have to see, like the different levels of cooperation, and try to work on all of these levels. At the end, we are here talking about a South Asian Economic Summit, and at the end of the day, any kind of economy has the internal demand as its final backbone, because everything else, which is like export, is highly volatile and is not dependable. And so I think focusing also on increasing the internal demand of a country will be helpful for fostering the economic success of the region and stabilizing it. So, and how can this be achieved? One way would be to overcome the unhealthy competition which sometimes can exist between countries. This could mean, for example, setting a joint standards on minimum wages, which should be on the level of living wages, then also on taxes, where also all countries in the region will benefit, and use these funds for the state, also for the necessary investments, particularly in education, to build the knowledge for innovation and to set up really a system of cooperation, innovation in the region. At the end of the day, the future of South Asia is South Asia. We in the German embassy often have to deal with tremendous amounts of people who want to go to Europe for studying. I myself studied in South Asia in 2 universities, the University of Pune and Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi, and I found that particularly at Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi, it was a kind of melting pot of the South Asian region. Like from Afghanistan to Bangladesh, Nepal, everyone was there. And I think such kind of models of joint learning of the leaders of tomorrow will also be one very practical contribution of joint policy making and overcoming the differences which exist in the region. In general, I think if also everyone develops the idea that even if there are differences in one area, this should not block the cooperation in another area, all countries of the region will profit a lot. And this is what we hope to work for together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Florian Helen, for those wonderful remarks. Actually, you just mentioned and cited a few examples how collaboration can be possible in many avenues. So now I would like to request Mr. Stefan Liller, who is the resident representative of the United Nations Development Program in Bangladesh. So over to you, Stefan.
Thank you, Famila. Distinguished speakers, colleagues, and guests, a very good afternoon to all of you. It is a privilege to address you today as you have united here over the past days to discuss South Asian regional cooperation in an era of unprecedented challenges as well as opportunities. With global economic currents shifting eastwards, the imperative for embracing regional cooperation is paramount to preserve and amplify South Asia's dynamism. It is crucial that we harness untapped potential and explore new opportunities to collectively navigate a future marked by prosperity and sustainability. Despite being home to 1.9 billion people, boasting impressive economic growth, the potential for intra-regional trade remains untapped, accounting for a mere 6% of its total trade, a stark contrast to the successful integration seen in other regions like Europe, the ASEAN region, and Latin America's Mercosur, where regional trade constitutes a much larger share of the total trade. Moreover, the devastating impact of the climate crisis is increasingly evident, posing severe threats to the ecosystems, communities, and economies, both within the region and across the globe. The remarkable development progress made by South Asia faces a heightened risk of reversal, where around 800 million people are at risk of climate change impacts. Last week, the UN Secretary General shared poignant words from the Annapurna region, highlighting that Nepal's iconic snow-capped mountains had lost nearly 1/3 of their glacial ice in just over 3 decades, posing regional and global threats like food and water scarcity and more frequent natural disasters. The recent devastating flash floods in Sikkim from a glacial lake outburst also underscores the urgency of this issue. Meanwhile, Bangladesh contends with its own set of climate adversities, as we witnessed in Sylhet earlier in the year. and agricultural heartlands also face the creeping menace of saline intrusion, wreaking havoc on the livelihoods of farmers. These are not isolated events. They are interconnected threads in the complex tapestry of the region's ecosystem, underscoring the importance for regional cooperation that transcends political boundaries to drive sustainable solutions and strategies for effective climate action. Disruption, such as that caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and the conflict in Ukraine, are also resulting in significant blows to the human development trajectory of many countries in the region who are now struggling to maintain macroeconomic stability. Therefore, as we tread through the complexities of the 21st century, our journey to accomplish the SDGs by 2030 has formidable challenges, and unfortunately, the region is not at all on track to achieve the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of Agenda 2030. Amid these challenges, one truth has become unequivocal. Our path forward requires fortified cooperation and enhanced collaboration. Strengthening regional cooperation and integration is essential not only for achieving shared prosperity within our boundaries, but it also holds crucial importance for the larger globe. The potential benefits, as we've also heard over the last 2 days, are numerous. Seamless transportation and the unrestricted movement of goods and people are fundamental to establishing a robust economic framework. Collaborative integration into regional and global value chains can create a wealth of job opportunities and unlock significant economic synergies. Enhancing cross-border infrastructure connectivity, streamlining customs and trade procedures, reducing tariff and non-tariff barriers, and investing in transportation and green energy networks have the potential to increase the region's collective GDP by 8 to 10%. Such action would unlock extraordinary economic opportunities and ensure South Asia's economic resilience and growth. In particular, access to clean energy is vital for South Asia and lies at the heart of Agenda 2030. By collaborating to harness the region's abundant renewable resources, be it hydroelectric power from the Himalayas, solar energy from the Thar Desert, or wind energy from the coasts, and sharing it across an integrated energy grid, the region can advance significantly towards clean, reliable, and affordable energy. There is hence a pressing need to establish cross-border partnership for shared solutions to move towards carbon neutrality and clearly link energy security with environmental cooperation. India's recent initiation of a trilateral energy collaboration with Bangladesh and Nepal is a positive step in this direction. Similarly, South Asia, with its significant digital divide, leaving 40% of the population, especially women and those in rural areas, digitally excluded, has considerable potential for a technological revolution that could be catalyzed by regional or cross-border collaboration. Emphasizing gender empowerment is critical. By fostering inclusive technology access and enhancing women's participation, we not only advance individual nation, but also drive collective progress across the region. The social sectors too, including health and education, pivotal to sustainable development, stand to gain significantly. Collaborative efforts across governments can yield innovative policy solutions to address the unique challenges faced by each country. With around 216 million people still living in extreme poverty and the persistence of gender disparities and climate vulnerabilities, regional development cooperation is instrumental in addressing these shared challenges. Looking ahead, regional cooperation in South Asia must evolve into a platform that not only strengthens internal ties, but also amplifies its unified voice on the international stage, including around global climate negotiations. The pursuit of the SDGs related to disaster resilience should be prioritized with heightened urgency, leveraging past achievements in disaster preparedness to implement a comprehensive and integrated regional network of multi-hazard early warning systems. Similar collaboration in information and data sharing would also be critical in building resilient cities designed to withstand seismic threat and in ensuring an effective regional response coordination mechanism to emergencies in case they would arise. A more open platform for regional cooperation could also help mitigate possible political sensitivities that have traditionally impeded South Asian economic integration by, for example, promoting institutional arrangements that facilitate the exchange of knowledge and best practices and creating a network that benefits the entire region. Equally important are the people-to-people connections that underpin our policy success, fortifying the cultural and historical ties within the region. With the engagement of diverse stakeholders, including civil society, academia, and the private sector, South Asia can tap into a source of knowledge, resource, and creativity essential for achieving shared objectives. With its convening authority and multi-sectoral agenda of work and strategic presence at both national and regional levels, the United Nations Development Programme is also well placed to help promote enhanced cooperation in South Asia and extend its reach throughout Asia and the Pacific by providing a platform for fostering broader integration across diverse stakeholders and markets. We have worked to bolster regional cooperation with efforts in the ASEAN, boasting a combined GDP of 3 trillion, which UNDP has substantially supported through 500 million in investments to advance regional integration. And with a deep understanding of sustainable development and as a thought leader in climate resilience, we also hope to continue leveraging our expertise and networks to foster regional and global dialogue, policy solutions, and forward-thinking initiatives that can also bolster regional cooperation and integration in South Asia. The 14th South Asia Economic Summit serves as a catalyst towards realizing a collective future of growth, prosperity, and peace for the region. And UNDP is delighted to have been a partner in this endeavor this year, but we were also there with you in the two last iterations in Dhaka. I extend my sincere appreciation to all those involved in the planning and execution of the summit, including the Center for Policy Dialogue and all regional actors. And as we close, my thoughts are with the victims and their families who were struck by the devastating earthquake in western Nepal over the weekend, and my sympathies to the Nepalese friends among us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stephen Liller, for your comments. Now I'd like to request our chairperson, Professor Rema Sovan, to make his remarks. Yes. Yes, sure. So let us just observe 1 minute silence for the victims of the Nepalese earthquake. Thank you. Thank you.
To begin with, I would like to, of course, offer my personal condolences to my colleagues from Nepal. We are part of a shared family, and this means that you share not only your joys, but also your moments of sadness. I would like to begin by complimenting and expressing my appreciation for my CPD colleagues who have worked enormously hard into the late hours of the night to get this show together and to bring you all together. I would correspondingly like to thank my partner colleagues in the SAES community who have come across, participated and contributed to this event. And I would finally like to register my appreciation to our partners who have supported us, to all of you who have come here to participate in this highly civilized conversation on addressing the opportunities for regional cooperation in the new context. For me, participating in such related events is both a satisfying experience and also occasion for thought. We are commemorating 30 years of CPD, and the whole premise for the founding of CPD was that you will create a space for what Amartya Sen refers to as public reasoning, where people can get together from diverse political, professional, social backgrounds to address common problems and to seek constructive solutions. To extend that idea into the South Asian space is particularly satisfying because we are operating here with much more diverse constituencies and with deeper, more intractable problems which have defied solution at the national level, at the official level over many years. The fact that all of us can come together and over the years address these issues with not just intelligence and creativity, but with sobriety, and depart feeling then that we have participated in a shared public purpose. So I again repeat my thanks and appreciation to my colleagues from the region. Now, when I look around here, I see that, of course, there is a lot of skepticism and concern over not necessarily what we have been talking about, but the wider issue of South Asia and the scope for cooperation. Now, I imagine that there is none amongst you who has actually lived through a period where South Asia was actually a region. I happen to be 88 years old, and I still have a memory of an integrated South Asia. A memory which could enable me to get on a train in Kolkata and go all the way up to Lahore, or do the reverse journey as late as 1956. Nor do you have a memory of when people could move around this region with considerable freedom. At the subaltern level, they could do so through a common labor market where you would move to where work opportunities were available. And as ordinary citizens, you could move around both for educational purposes, for health-seeking purposes. There was, therefore, a period, as I pointed out at the outset, where South Asia was actually certainly the most integrated region in the post-colonial world and was possibly more integrated than Europe at that time. You would not have been born then, I suppose.
Not yet.
Right. I have also lived through a second phase, which would range, I would say, probably from the 1960s and 70s. Some of you, I would certainly see from your gray hairs, would probably have a memory of that particular period, in which actually nothing was happening. We had successfully, at the official level, dismantled South Asia, and there was no cooperation or interaction whatsoever. Here we are celebrating the 14th SAES. Now, throughout the 1960s, in fact, throughout the 1950s, as far as I recollect, no single event, except one, took place which brought the economists of that region together. In 1968, a conference of economists was finally convened in Colombo, courtesy, I think, of the Ford Foundation, where the economists of the region could come together to address this idea of cooperation. But that was the only occasion. And this state of affairs persisted well into the 70s. At that time, trade interaction was also at a minimal. Movements were virtually non-existent. So there was a phase where then the disintegrated nature of the region had manifestations which were evident to all of us. So today, when you then look back on the next 50 years, or the next, I would say, 40 years or so, it is a very different world. Today, even though our trade may be only 5% of our total trade, at least it is taking place. And market mechanisms are working. It would obviously be a much higher level of trade had official interventions in the market for varied and not always rational reasons not actually interrupted this process. Citizens have been interacting, again in progressively increasing numbers. I don't know if anyone has actually compiled those numbers, but suppose that we were to hypothesize, and this has been suggested going back to the very first round of South Asian civil society dialogues, that we were to do away with visas. The number of people going across borders to interact with each other would probably multiply exponentially by a factor of 10. Now, if you want to see how the people of South Asia view the concept of interacting with each other in the framework of a wider community, the one test case would be the lifting of visas. Someone could carry out, under the new technology which is in use, a laboratory experiment on that subject just to test this hypothesis. Now, this suggests actually that the concept of a South Asian community is alive and well in the minds of the people of this region. So that when we sit here, we are no longer operating within some sort of speculative or hypothetical framework of thinking, but we are operating in relation to the felt needs of large numbers of people who, if they were given full opportunity, would be expressing themselves, whether through civil society interactions or through the marketplace with much more vigor. SAES likes to think that it is commemorating its 14th conclave, but there are many other civil society institutions which have been meeting over the years in a broad range of communities, whether they are professional groups of chartered accountants or engineers or other professional groups, or whether they are simply human rights activists or gender activists. All of them are acting together, and we simply don't keep track of it. So there is already a functioning South Asian community. And all that we are essentially doing over here is we are trying to keep track of this process, and we are trying to build upon it and to try and institutionalize some of these initiatives which are already taking place. Now here, I would like to again remind you that SAES has been tracking many of these interactions, tracing their progress, but of course doing it in a discontinuous process. I mean, had you, for instance, got a registered memory of this process, you would have taken note of the fact that way back in the late 1990s, CPD, within the framework of our association with CASAC, the Coalition for Action for South Asian Cooperation, actually hosted an event to discuss monetary cooperation in the region. And all the agenda items which came up about currency cooperation and its various variants were all discussed over there, and presumably many of the conclusions which were reached at that event were correspondingly reached today in the working group. Now, obviously, some people should have been pointing this out, that if you had working and sensible ideas about how a process of more monetary cooperation could be conceived and then taken forward, and you could identify the roadblocks on the way, the nature of the discussion you would have had today would have been very different, because you would have been conversing on the basis of an inherited memory, and all your discussion would then be part of a process of value addition. In the Group of Eminent Persons report, which has been, again, part of another of the plenary sessions, if you really track all the suggestions which were put on the table, and we are here talking about the late 1990s, 1998, right? Much of the discourse which went on here and in the successive SAES meetings which began in 2008 would actually have been identified, and then we have gone on discussing these issues and obviously adding value to it at each stage without necessarily knowing that you are adding value to it. In the meantime, objective conditions have also changed. If you are talking about in the 1990s, the need for moving towards a free trade area, we were then simply discussing preferences. We graduated to a free trade area, but we were then still haunted by the so-called negative list, which meant that half the issues for which you have been given duty-free access were simply non-functional because various bureaucratic and business constituencies would say that these should be put on a negative list. Now, to trace the process of the negative list, to trace the dialogues on the most favored nation issue, which used to come up year after year, because in those days Pakistan was having problems with it. But then Dr. Hussain told us that by 2016, this issue came to a climax, but then again came to a standstill. But then why has it been at a standstill for the last 7 years? No one is in a position, not even Dr. Hussain himself, to give me a clear or constructive answer as to why this has been at a standstill. So all this essentially suggests that it is exceedingly important now that we reconstruct a memory of the process of South Asian interaction. And as far as SAES is concerned, this would be related to the issues related to economic cooperation. This was the issue I pointed out at my opening session, and I reiterate this, that all of you will probably have much better memories than me, but how far you are willing to tax your memories to remember what was discussed when and what has changed today, I'm not quite sure how many of you could do something about it. So the positive suggestion that we have given is that a particular institution within the partner institutions of SAES could take on this responsibility of preparing a record of the discussions which have taken place, issue by issue, where you identify the different issues which were discussed, how views have evolved or they have not evolved, how they have progressed or how they have not progressed, what changes in objective conditions have conditioned these changed attitudes. And we would then be in a position to project not just before the 15 sites being hosted by our colleagues in Kathmandu, but we would be able to present this to the entire South Asian region, and particularly to the governments, to hold up to them the progress or lack of progress which has been made. The second issue I want to put forward before you is that a lot of the discussion has taken place drawing on the knowledge that entity exists in South Asia, the South Asia for SARC. Now, by now SARC is virtually moribund. We are told that some aspects of it work. And because it has been largely moribund, not many of you, again, are particularly aware, conscious, or even interested in what roles it actually performed. Well, actually, it did perform quite a few roles, and it did in its own way progress some of the ideas which were on the table. While civil society, and here I would again like to think that CPD, through the initiative of Dr. Rahmatullah and then in partnership with Probir Dey in RIS, had put together a working agenda of how transport integration could actually take place in South Asia, and some initiatives that actually been made in that area. You will not be aware that in the late 90s, we hosted a conference in Dhaka, CPD in partnership with UNSCAP, in which we invited the railway officials of the region to discuss the construction of an integrated railway system, taking us all the way from Bangladesh to Pakistan. I'm not sure if that also extended into Afghanistan. And actually then, through a process of negotiations and give and take, which involved Bangladesh at that time had been very reluctant to give transit rights to India to go from West Bengal to Northeast India. We conceded that. India had been hesitant about giving transit rights to Nepal through India to connect with the railway system of Bangladesh. India was reluctant to give transit rights to go through India all the way to Pakistan. Pakistan was reluctant to give transit rights to take the process up to the borders. Now, there had been an agreement reached by officials of all people on how this was to be brought about, but it broke down on some small details over where the particular connectivity between Nepal and Bangladesh should actually take place. And once it broke down, and there were promises that it would be referred higher up to higher people, the idea was never, the process was never reassembled. What I point out is that civil society, occasionally acting with public officials, can actually produce constructive solutions, and that feasible solutions were workable even at that particular time. So a process where you can bring people together, and SARC played that role, had an opportunity to create opportunities. Now, if you look at some of the issues which were put on the table, which at the moment constituted crisis-related problems, for example, the macroeconomic crisis which afflicted Sri Lanka, which is in parts afflicting Pakistan, and now there are some elements of it intruding into Bangladesh. The ongoing climate crisis, the fallout from the Ukraine war. Now, in the normal course of events, all these issues should have been collectively addressed, and if you had a working institutional mechanism such as SARC, they could actually have convened meetings to address these issues, if not leading to any sort of collective action. And then perhaps the outcomes of such meetings would have inspired some of the national leaders to then initiate summit-level gatherings to address these particular issues. But right now, there is simply no institutional entity operating within the region in the absence of a dysfunctional SARC for addressing such issues. This brings me to my concluding point, that when the official process is going through a process of recession, organizations such as SAES then assume a much more significant and responsible role. And various other civil society organizations across the region who overlap with many of the agenda items which should normally be of official concern, then acquire a certain responsibility. Because it is their responsibility then to keep these issues on the table and to demonstrate that whilst the states may have problems in addressing these issues, the people of the region actually have a vested interest in addressing these problems, and at least in keeping the issue alive and in seeking out solutions. So that whilst SAES may have continued its meetings because we had an interest in meeting each other and had interesting things to say to each other, you now have an added responsibility in these times, that because the official discourse on South Asia is not moving forward, this does not provide a legitimacy for us to then relax and say, well, nothing much is going to happen. There is no reason why we should get too excited about it. You have now a doubly demanding responsibility imposed on you, and we hope that SAES at least would continue to discharge this, but with the added responsibility of providing depth to your conversations, based, as I said, on creating this memory, and also performing, to some extent, more of an advocacy role than just a deliberative role. Through this collective process, if you then aspire to move forward and set up a new group of persons to address the future agenda of SAARC, all the better. But the essential problem is that you can only look to the future if you can know something about the past. And you can also ask, and this we never really do, why nothing is moved forward. That conversation of the whys, in fact, continue to haunt us. And I think one enlightened gentleman in the earlier conversation suggested at that point that perhaps the missing agenda item is a discussion between economists and security officials from each country to sit together around the same table to find out and to address something about the whys of why the South Asian process of cooperation has not moved forward. So I thank all of you for assembling together. I thank my colleagues, and I hope you will have a good journey home, and that we will reassemble in Kathmandu with perhaps an added sense of responsibility and commitment to the challenges that we face. Whether the official climate will have improved by then and the SAARC Secretariat doors would have been opened in Kathmandu so that we could at least be entertained to a reception over there, I'm not quite sure. This was the tradition in past meetings of SAES. We will wait and see. So thank you, and good evening to all of you.
Thank you, Chair. I know it's late, but I have to say a few words in connection with the people who have contributed to this. And so with the permission of the Chair, I would like to propose the vote of thanks. So distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, so I would like to thank a couple of people, in fact a lot of people, for helping us in organizing this SAES and make it a success. At the outset, I would like to express our profound thanks and gratitude to the chief guest who was present yesterday, Dr. Shirin Sharmin Chaudhary, Honorable Speaker, Bangladesh Parliament, for her gracious presence at the inaugural session. We greatly appreciate the presence of special guest, Mr. M.A. Mannan MP, Honorable Minister for Planning, Government of Bangladesh, who was also present at the inaugural session yesterday. Once again, I would like to thank our co-organizers, SDPI, Saudi, RIS, and IPS, for their support right from the beginning, from the conceptualization of the SAES, and also designing and selecting guests, and finally for coming here. I would like to extend our sincere thanks to our partners who have also made this SAES possible. Our supporters, I would like to, some are present here, but some are not. I would like to mention their names. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, German Cooperation, Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, FES, the World Bank, and United Nations Development Program, UNDP, for their generous support. I would like to thank all our overseas participants who have come to Dhaka and who have shared their knowledge, expertise, and insights with us. I would also like to thank our Bangladeshi panelists and guests who have been with us during these 2 days. We gratefully recognize the support from various organizations, including the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Home Affairs, members of law enforcing agencies in smooth visa support to our overseas guests and ensuring their safety. I like to take this opportunity to thank the electronic and print media for their support in taking the messages of the 14th SAES to a wider audience. Finally, a special word of thanks to the management of the Hotel Sheraton for their excellent management during these 2 days. Distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank and express our deep appreciation to our chairperson, Professor Rehma Sobhan. We are grateful to him for his advice and guidance in organizing the SAES. CPD's Board of Trustees has been with us all along in this effort, who have been giving us encouragement and support. I thank the CPD's distinguished fellows, Dr. Devopriyo Bhattacharya, Professor Mustafizur Rahman, and Professor Raunak Jahan, CPD's Research Director, Dr. Khondokar Ghulam Moazem, for their guidance and support. CPD's Joint Director, Dialogue and Communication, Mr. Abhru Bhattacharya, and his team have played the lead role in steering the activities of the event. Mr. Mamunur Rashid, Deputy Director, Administration, and Ms. Nadia Naurin, Research Associate of CPD, have worked exceptionally hard in making the 14th SAES a success. Indeed, CPD's Research Division, Administration, and Finance Division, and the entire CPD collective have put in tireless efforts and spent sleepless nights to organize the 14th SAES. My sincere gratitude to such a talented and dedicated CPD collective for their hard work. May I request my guests here to give them a round of applause. I'd also like to call upon all my CPD colleagues who are present here. Please come here so that everyone can see you. Please come this side. Okay, quick. So part of the team is here. There are more who are not here with us. In fact, some of them have been working in the office today also. So they have been working, and as you know, that organizing such an event involving so many participants from various countries is not easy. There are always constant changes in program, in guests, in their flights, and many more, last-minute problems are also they have been tackling with patience, with vigor, and with lot of hard work and then enthusiasm. For many of them, this is the first time they are dealing with this kind of conference and meeting. So they have put in their all-out efforts. So once again, thank you very much. I'm really grateful to you. All the best. Thank you. So finally, thank you once again, all the panelists, guests from Bangladesh and from South Asia and beyond. Till we meet again, I wish you a healthy and rewarding life. And our foreign guests, I wish you a safe travel back home. Thank you and good evening.